Hodgkinson just ran an astounding 800 meter indoor world record to decimate the previous mark set by Slovenia's Jolanda Čeplak of 155.82. And whilst this was an utterly astounding performance by the Brit, there are some key factors in this race that I think most people are missing, and honestly, I think this race execution by Keely was subpar despite her getting the world record. In this video, I will be covering the race, speculating on whether I think Keely can get the outdoor world record, and commenting on the serious issue I see in 800 meter running that I think severely impacted Keely's performance today. First, let's cover what happened prior to this race, as the Brits had given us a small taste of what she was capable of by running in the heats of the UK Indoor Championships. She was not facing any stiff competition, but had to compete due to a technical rule by British Athletics requiring participation in the competition to be eligible for selection for the World Indoor Championships. In her heat, Keely treated us to a new British indoor record of 156.33, the third fastest indoor time in history. And bearing in mind this was without paces, wave lights, competition to push her on, a big crowd, and a fast track, so there are a lot of factors against her, and she still ran excellently. As a result, many people were expecting her to take this world record, but no one could have expected just how dominant she was. The Brit began her world record race like a bullet, going through 200 meters behind the pacemaker in 26.47. Interestingly, she was challenged by Swiss up-and-comer Audrey Werro, who ran a 155 personal best last season and has run 157 indoors this year. It seems Keely would have company on this world record attempt, as Werro slotted in behind her. They went through 400 meters in a diabolical 55.56 seconds, on course for 151 pace. She continued and went through 600 meters in 125.06, clocking a 29-second previous lap, and by this point dropping Werro severely. The race was beginning to stink for the Olympic champion, but Keely dug deep and finished in a staggering 154.87, 0.95 seconds faster than the previous world record. An astonishing time by the Brit, and it's got everyone talking about what her outdoor prospects will look like this season. This is Keely's third fastest time ever, and based on how world record times indoors generally convert outdoors, you would think she can at least shave a second off that 154 time come the outdoor season. With 2026 mostly being an off year, with the major race being the European champs this summer, it seems like the perfect time to finally take down the ever controversial record of Jarmila Kratislava. But based off this performance, could she actually manage to beat the time? Well, one thing that I think needs to be remembered in this discussion is that there is a big difference between breaking 154 and breaking the world record. Based off this indoor time, I think we can all agree that sub 154 appears very doable for the Brit, which would make her the third woman ever to achieve the mark. She's run a 154 mid-time before and is looking fitter than ever. Given she can put all her attention into running super fast this year rather than peaking for a specific championship, it almost feels inevitable, barring injury of course. Keely said herself that she feels like 153 is possible this year, but the world record stands at 153.28 and is therefore well into that territory. Even if she manages a full second off her personal best, she won't severely challenge the world record. To break the time, she is going to need to be in near 152 shape, and that's a completely different ballgame. So whilst this is the best chance for her to break the world record yet, I do wonder if she's going to have to wait at least another year before she finally breaks down that last barrier. One concern is that Keely mentioned this indoor race was on her calendar for months, meaning she has likely been training and prepping for this specific moment for a long time. And this means that her time was maybe not just the result of excellent training, but also peaking for this specific race. Perhaps her outdoor times will not translate as naturally, as she will not be in the same fitness. However, a big factor that she has attributed to her performances in the last few weeks is finally being able to have an injury-free winter. And so whilst it's likely that she did peak for this race well, it's also just the product of some of the best months of training she's ever had in the winter season. It is very difficult for me to say what she'll look like in a few months, and I do still maintain that people are underestimating the difference between a 153 high and the world record. My current feeling is that Keely will run 153 this year, but I think it will more likely be a 153 mid to high time rather than the actual world record, which will remain ever elusive. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I have a major issue with the way this world record was executed, and it's something I've been talking about in the 800 meter for a long time. One of the things most shocking about this race is that they set the wave lights to an astonishing 153.8 pace. Now, obviously this demonstrates how confident Keely's camp were in her ability to get the record, but I don't think they imagined she would get anywhere close to that time. The conventional wisdom in the 800 meter is that a 2 to 3 second positive split is the most efficient way to run the race, as most of the world records have been run this way. So ideally, Keely charges after 153 pace for the first lap using the wave lights to guide her, and then holds on for dear life for the rest of the attempt. But here is my controversial take. I genuinely believe that the 2-second differential is the wrong way to run the 800 meters, and is the reason why why both world records on the men's and women's side have yet to fall. There is very little good evidence to support positive splits being the best way to run the 800 meter. In any other event, even splits are known to be the most physically efficient, even if there is some merit to running a negative split race for the mental benefits. Keely ran a colossal 4-second positive split in this race, so even if we accepted the conventional 2-second mark being the most efficient, she still did not run a fantastically paced race. We also see a similar phenomenon in the men's 800, where the standard seems to be to rocket off in 49 seconds for the first lap or 1:39 pace, and then try and hold on to get the world record time, usually resulting in around a 3-second positive split differential. The current evidence we have is that even splits are the best for most endurance events. So why do people make an exception for the 800 meter? A lot of it comes from the history of how records have been run in the event, as analysis has shown that the overwhelming majority of the fastest times have been run with positive splits, rooted to national and age world records with similar pacing. A study of 26 world records in the 800 found that 23 or 92% of them were run with a positive split. But I think using that data to extrapolate that positive splits are the most efficient way to run the race is not a good methodology, because it does not take into account how unique race conditions will affect performances. This has a snowball effect. Emmanuel Wanyoni is partly responsible for the majority of 141 times we have seen in the last few years, as he has acted as a de facto pacemaker for the other runners and dragged them to super fast times. If he opens with an aggressive positive split, people naturally follow and then gas out just like him. As a result, we see a majority of the world's fastest times being positive splits. And as a side note, we have seen even splits be used very effectively in the event. Cooper Lukenhaus ran his near mythical 1:42 time using pretty even splits. Jarmila Kratislava also did the same for her 1:53 time. Marco Arop actually used negative splits to run his PB in the Paris Olympics, despite running the entirety of the last lap in lane 2. And this is potentially one of the most underrated athletics performances in history. If you account for the fact that Arop ran roughly 806 meters, given the extra distance covered, he technically broke the world record in this Paris Games, running the 800 meters in 1:40.4 seconds. Wanyoni won the gold that day since he charged to the front from the beginning and did not have to run around his opponents, always on the inside line. However, he technically was not the quickest man over 800 that day. But as I previously said, observational evidence is at best supplementary, as it is subject and skewed by real world race conditions. You can't really use it to form the foundation of an argument, even in cases where it looks strong. So is there any physiological evidence that positive splits work best? From what I have seen of the literature, and bearing in mind there isn't a huge amount of it, even splits are generally agreed to be the best strategy for long distance races. This is defined roughly as anything above 3 to 4 minutes. However, in the shorter events around 2 to 3 minutes in length, there is conflicting evidence. One study of 7 cyclists found that participants perform better in 3-minute maximal efforts with a fast start compared to an even split strategy, with even splits being better for 6-minute time trials. However, other small cycling studies like this one indicate the opposite, with even or possibly negative splits being considered superior. In running, there are very few studies as always. One case found that amateur runners covered more distance in a 2 to 3 minute time trial when employing a pace with a faster start compared to an even pacing strategy. However, this study has several issues in that the participants were very recreational runners, running roughly 670 meters in just under 2 minutes. They were also measured based on their ability to stay on the treadmill at a pace calculated for them based on data in other tests. The runners were put on a treadmill at a set pace and could give up at any time. They were measured by how far they ran and how long they lasted. But this introduces a mental toughness component which adds a high degree of variability to the results. When you consider the fact that they did the positive test split last of all the different methods, it's very feasible that they were simply better at doing trials to exhaustion for factors unrelated to the pacing. There was also a study of 800 meter runners with an average personal best in the low 150s in 2006. It found that even splits produce the least amount of VO2 output when compared to positive splits in the 800. This supports the idea that the aerobic system is underutilized in the 800 meter when using even splits. However, the theory goes that the aerobic system is kicked into gear with positive splits faster and is therefore used more efficiently. But the study does not make any conclusions on whether this actually impacts 800 meter performance, instead focusing on VO2 output. Overall, there just isn't much evidence one way or the other supporting a specific type of pacing strategy, and it certainly isn't proportional to how religiously positive splits are used in 800 meter running today. What we do know though is that even splits are the best way forward for every other distance event, so it makes sense to also translate that to the 800 meter in my personal opinion. So I would like these 800 meter runners to try even splits and see how that works out for them. And even if you want to maintain that positive splits are the best way forward, surely we can agree that 4 seconds is way too aggressive. So all this to say, I strongly believe that Keely could have run even faster than her current world record if she had stuck with a more even pacing strategy. I would personally advocate for a 56.5 second opening lap if she wanted to go for the world record, maybe 56 seconds if you want to stick to a light positive split. This applies to Wanyoni and all the other men who want to break Rudisha's record as well. Rocketing off in 49 seconds is only going to hinder your chances. If you want to see a video about how track's greatest financial disaster destroyed an Olympic legend, then click on this video here. Let me know your thoughts about this topic in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.